Hi everyone, David Aragona here with another edition of the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series, and it is the final weekend of the final round of 100-point Kentucky Derby qualifying prep races. We have three of them taking place across the country, including the Grade 2 Wood Memorial, the final race of the day on Saturday at Aqueduct, going the 1.125 distance for the three-year-olds. Let's throw up the field for this race. 13 runners were entered in this Wood Memorial. One horse is expected to be scratched. That is the number 6 Clear the Air. His connections announced that he will instead compete in the Bluegrass Stakes on Saturday. He was entered in both, but he will stay home in Kentucky. So we'll go ahead with 12 horses that are scheduled to run in this Wood Memorial. It is a wide open field, and you'll notice that the horse that I put as the morning line favorite, the number 13 Hit Show, one that I was actually expecting to make a shorter price than the 5-2 he is on the morning line, got mired all the way outside in the number 12 post position. Now it was the number 13 at the time of the draw. So not a great draw for that favorite Hit Show. He will face off against 3 Todd Pletcher trainees, including the rail-drawn Dreamlike, a maiden coming into this race, actually one of 2 maidens going out for the Todd Pletcher barn, but a horse that has run some nice speed figures. So that's why I have him pegged as the second choice on the morning line at 7-2. Before I get to the main contenders, let's take a look at some features in TimeformUS, including the TimeformUS pace projector. With such a large field, not surprising to see that fast pace flag showing up. And we do have 3 runners shown towards the front end who all figure to contest the pace in this race. No surprise to see the number 7, Arctic Arrogance, shown up in that vanguard of leading horses. He has shown speed in all of his prior starts for Linda Rice. The number 10, Uncle Jake, a bit of a wild card, coming off a gate-to-wire victory at Laurel in his prior start. And then the number 12, Mr. Swagger, a horse that had shown speed sprinting on debut, was ridden from off the pace in the Gotham, but would not be a surprise if from that wide draw, his connections decided to go back to some more aggressive tactics. You do see the number 9, Korpi, gets the late pace flag on the pace projector, indicating that he has the highest late pace rating of anybody in this field. So a horse like Korpi, who tends to break slowly, will be hoping that they're moving up front so that that speed does come back. Let's also take a look at one of the new features in TimeformUS. That is the Finish Projector. You can access the Finish Projector in TimeformUS on your mobile PPs or in the new desktop version of TimeformUS that just launched on DRF.com. And this is the TimeformUS algorithm showing a visual representation of the TimeformUS power picks that you might be familiar with from the classic version of TimeformUS. And the Finish Projector just gives the added versatility of showing the relationship between the runners at the wire. And you can see it's a pretty close call between the first and second picks in this race, the number 7 Arctic Arrogance and the number 1 Dreamlike. They've run a couple of the highest speed figures in this field, and they're both runners that do figure to be forwardly placed in this race. So even though there's that fast pace predicted, at least the TimeformUS picks are not assuming that it's going to completely fall apart in this Wood Memorial. Let's go through some of these main contenders, and let's begin with the Wither Stakes, which did produce the morning line favorite for this Wood Memorial. That is Hit Show, and we'll take a look at him in the stretch of the Withers. Running down Arctic Arrogance, who is also back in this field. That is Hit Show in the Pink Silks, who is reeling in the leading Arctic Arrogance as they come onto the 3/16 pole in this replay. And the good thing about Hit Show is that he got the 1.125 distance without much problem. You can see he's finishing up this race pretty strongly. I will say he got a great trip to win this Withers. He was sitting in behind an early duel. The pace of this race was pretty fast. When we show Hit Show's PPs, you're going to see some red color-coded pace figures in TimeformUS, and he took advantage of that as he reeled in the early leader Arctic Arrogance to win that race with a 1:14 TimeformUS speed figure. Coming in, that is one of the fastest numbers in this field. I believe it is the fastest speed figure anybody has earned in this race. But like I said at the top, Hit Show got a perfect trip last time, and he is going to have to overcome that number 12 post position in this Wood Memorial. So he could have a much wider trip than the ground-saving journey he got in the Withers coming to him on Saturday. So maybe a reason to be a little bit skeptical of this horse at what figures to be a short price. And Hit Show is a horse that has taken a lot of money in every start so far in his career, gone off at 6-5, 6-5, 8-5, and 6-5. So I expect him to take money once again in this Wood Memorial. As for the horse that he ran down last time, Arctic Arrogance, he ran his usual good race. Arctic Arrogance has never finished out of the exacta in 6 career starts. he has lost 3 times in a row, finishing second to some horses that you might say he should have beaten on a couple of those occasions, particularly 2 and 3 back when he was beaten by Lugan Knight and WNL. And you could say he was just second best to Hit Show last time in the Withers going this distance. But I do want to note Arctic Arrogance was the horse that was setting that contested and fast pace in the Withers. You see those early TimeformUS pace figures of 149. That is really fast for the 1.125 distance. And he paid the price at the end, fading to second, beaten 5.5 lengths in that race, but he still finished well clear of the others and well clear of the horses that were contesting that pace with him. And a couple of those horses that were involved in the pace, Andiamo a Firenze and Prove Right, have since come back to run much faster speed figures in shorter races. So suggesting that Arctic Arrogance deserves every bit of that pace upgrade that he's getting for that performance in TimeformUS, coming off that career best 112 TimeformUS speed figure, just 2 points lower than the number that Hit Show was assigned for that Withers, despite losing to that rival by 5 lengths. We'll see how the pace shakes out in this Wood Memorial. Linda Rice is electing to take the blinkers off Arctic Arrogance. He missed a start last month. They were planning to run in the Gotham, came down with a bit of an issue, I believe a temperature. He was forced out of that race. But now he's coming back off a series of strenuous workouts. So it seems like Linda Rice has him fit for this 9-furlong test. We'll see what Arctic Arrogance can do in this Wood Memorial. The other horse coming out of the Withers is General Banker. And this horse has gained a little bit of a fan following. He's picked up some Kentucky Derby qualifying points, despite being a New York bred, a horse that won a stallion stakes at the end of last year. He's been an overachiever for his trainer, James Ferraro, finishing third in 3 straight Kentucky Derby preps in New York, but he's been a distant third in those races, far behind horses like Hit Show and Arctic Arrogance. He was really no threat to the winner in the Gotham last time. So General Banker is going to need the pace to come apart and some horses to not run their A races if he is going to be competitive in this Wood Memorial. Let's take a look at the Gotham next, the more recent of the New York preps for the Kentucky Derby, and we'll check out the stretch run of that race featuring Slip Mahoney, who is the horse coming widest into the stretch. You see him highlighted all the way towards the left of the screen. Note the other horse that we're highlighting in this replay was the scratched horse, Clear the Air, so we're not going to pay too much attention to him. But Slip Mahoney does pass a lot of horses in the stretch to get up for second in this Gotham. The problem is, I'm not sure how much running was going on behind the winner in this race, Raise Kane, who is running onto the wire with that loose horse, the one that had dropped his rider at the start, was just well clear of the rest of the field at the end. And Slip Mahoney was barely able to get by General Banker at the finish of that race. And I already said, I don't think too much of General Banker in this Wood Memorial. So I think Slip Mahoney is going to have to run a lot better than he did in the Gotham if he's going to be competitive in this Wood. The positive thing about Slip Mahoney is that he doesn't have to come from as far back as he was in the early stages of that Gotham. I'm not really sure what was going on in the opening furlongs of that race, but he broke a little bit slowly, just found himself towards the back of that 14-horse field down the backstretch. I think he's a horse that does have much more tactical speed than that. He showed that in his starts 2 and 3 back, including that maiden victory over Korpi. So he can be more forward in here, and I expect him to get a mid-pack trip this time. And also, added distance is supposed to be his friend, being by Arrogate out of a dam that was a grade 1 winner going this 1.125 distance. So there are some things to like about Slip Mahoney. He just has to run better than he did last time in the Gotham. Another horse coming out of the Gotham that I did not highlight in that replay is Mr. Swagger. He's another one that was done no favors by the post position draw here. He will break out of post 11 if this field holds together after that one scratch, being the number 12 in this race. And he's a horse that showed a lot of precocity on debut when he won, going the 6.5 furlong distance, beating what seemed like a good field that day. The runner-up Register came back to win with an improved speed figure. The 4th place finisher Asmodeus came back with a couple of nice performances, including a maiden victory 2 back after that. So Mr. Swagger definitely coming out of a strong race on debut. Didn't exactly back it up in the Gotham last time, but they tried out a different running style that day. There was a lot of speed signed on in the Gotham, and you could see his connections had just made the decision beforehand not to use this horse's early speed, because the rider really did not ask him for anything coming out of the starting gate and just gave him a very conservative ride, saving ground most of the way. I'm not sure that racing right on the rail at Aqueduct on Gotham Day was the best place to be, and he spent more time there than most other horses in that field. So he made a brief move into contention at the top of the stretch, didn't really finish off that race. I do think this horse has more ability than he's shown so far, but they're asking a lot of him to stretch out to the 9 furlongs in just the third start of his career. He's bred to do it, but still many obstacles to overcome for Mr. Swagger. I guess the one good thing about him is he's going to be a big price in this race if you do like him. Let's check out a horse that's drawn down towards the inside. That is the number 2, Shadow Dragon. And we'll look at his race 2 back when he was second to his Bill Mott stablemate Rocket Can in the Holy Bull at Gulfstream. Shadow Dragon was a big price this day, going off at 34-1. He made a nice late move to get up for second, going this mile and the 16th distance around the 2 turns at Gulfstream. He didn't quite back up that performance last time, though, in the Fountain of Youth when he came back against a tougher field that included, once again, Rocket Can, but also last year's 2-year-old champion Forte, who's widely regarded as the early favorite for the Kentucky Derby. And Shadow Dragon just never really able to mount a rally against that field. I will say he spent some time on the inside that day at Gulfstream, and I don't think that the rail or the inside paths were really the place to be on that March 4th card at Gulfstream Park. So that's a potential excuse for him, but I'm not really sure that Shadow Dragon gets better with added distance, and he really is going to need things to fall apart if he's to be competitive in this Wood Memorial. Well, Todd Pletcher entered 3 runners in this race, and I want to talk about all of them, including the horse that I pegged as the second choice on the morning line, and that is the number 1, Dreamlike. Let's take a look at his last race when he was competing against Maiden Company and actually lost as the 1-5 favorite. That might not be the profile of a horse that you expect to be successful in a Grade 2 Derby prep next time out, but Dreamlike ran a pretty fast speed figure this day, as he did in his debut, and as we throw up his TimeformUS PPs, you'll note he's earned speed figures of 109, 110 in these 2 second place finishes against Maiden Company. That makes him one of the fastest horses on the way in to this Wood Memorial. And it's not like he's been beaten by bad horses down at Gulfstream. The winner of his debut, Arthur's Ride, is a Bill Mott trainee that had shown some real talent during his 2-year-old season and came back with a good effort off the layoff to beat Dreamlike on debut. I liked the way that Dreamlike was staying on at the end of that 1-mile race at Gulfstream. And then last time, even though he was beaten again at a very short price, he finished behind a horse, Empire Strikes Fast, who is another Bill Mott trainee who looks like he might have a lot of talent, a son of Empire Maker who won his debut that day, gamely fending off Dreamlike. But I did like the way Dreamlike galloped out past the wire. Just seems like one that's really going to relish this 1.125 distance. He certainly has the pedigree to get better going longer, being by Gun Runner out of a dam that's a full sister to Kentucky Oaks winner Untappable. So no surprise that he sold for nearly $1 million at auction, given that kind of pedigree. I've watched some of his recent workouts, including one where they put the blinkers on. He will run with blinkers on Saturday for trainer Todd Pletcher, and he trained pretty forwardly in company with Tappet Trice, who is expected to be the strong favorite in the Bluegrass on Saturday. So Dreamlike definitely has the credentials to do well in a race like the Wood Memorial, especially considering that this did not come up as the toughest edition of the Wood that we've ever seen. Another Todd Pletcher trainee that should have no trouble with the distance is the number 11 Classic Catch. Let's take a look at his last race at Gulfstream Park. This was a 9-furlong race at the N1X allowance level, and this is just typical Classic Catch. He's never going to really wow you with his victories, but he just keeps staying on well at the end of his races. He's going to finish stronger than his competition, which allows him to grind away to a 2-length victory here over Mr. Ripple. And I do want to point out that horse that was second to him, because Mr. Ripple came back last week in the Florida Derby and ran a better than it looks 4th place finish behind Forte and Mage. Mr. Ripple was involved in the pace of that race, a very fast pace that came apart. So I think that he ran pretty well to be 4th in that spot, which certainly flatters the form of Classic Catch coming out of that allowance race. He is a little bit light on speed figures compared to some others in this field, including compared to his stablemate Dreamlike. But I just think Classic Catch is going to get the right kind of pace set up here. He's going to get the 1.125 distance. He actually owns a victory going this distance at Aqueduct. That's where he broke his maiden last year. So he feels like a horse that is really coming into his own at the right time. And I do believe Trevor McCarthy, who takes over the reins, will be a very good fit for him on Saturday at Aqueduct. One more horse to take a look at, also from the Todd Pletcher stable, is the number 9 Korpi. You might remember at the start of this preview, I said he was the horse that had the highest late pace rating of anybody in this field. He's another maiden coming into this race, 0-for-6 in his career. He was a close second behind Slip Mahoney 2-back. They've already tried a Derby prep with Korpi. They did that last time in the Risen Star, going this distance at Fairgrounds, and he just got too far back in the early stages. He's a horse that is typically very slow out of the starting gate. He showed that attribute again last time at Fairgrounds, so can't do that in the Wood Memorial if he expects to improve on that performance. But if the pace comes apart, at least you do know Korpi will be charging at the end. So let's start my picks for this Wood Memorial, and I was leaning towards some of those Todd Pletcher trainees in this race. I actually do believe Dreamlike is the horse to beat, just given his post position, likelihood to improve with the distance and general upside of this horse. I expect him to run well, and among the short prices, I actually prefer Dreamlike to Hit Show, who was going to take a lot of money based on a perfect trip last time out, now drawn all the way out in that outside post position. But my top pick in this Wood is going to be the number 11 Classic Catch. Like I said, he's got to get a little faster on speed figures, but I think the distance of this race really works for this horse. The pace is going to work in his favor, and he just feels like one that is improving at the right time and might be coming out of a race that is a little better than it looks. So I expect the price to be fair. He's 10-1 in the morning line. The number 11 Classic Catch, my top pick in the Wood Memorial on Saturday at Aqueduct. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.